Welcome back to Candid Convos with Nurse E. If you have not met me, I am Nurse E, and today I am here with a very special guest. I am here with a good friend of mine, Vondell Richmond, who is a realtor with Keller Williams. And today we're going to answer all of your questions about real estate. He is knowledgeable. He's been doing this for years.
Yes, 5 years now.
Is 5?
5 licensed technically since 2017,
right.
So we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. But he knows real estate inside and out, and he's ready to help educate you today and to debunk myths about, you know, purchasing a home or commercial property, whatever it is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
This is the guy for you. So, you know what? I usually start with my I was getting ready to call him a patient. He's not a patient.
I don't know, sometimes.
With my guests kind of bragging on themselves.
Yeah.
And one thing that I want you to specifically talk about is your background is in film.
Okay.
And how that kind of correlates with real estate. Do you have like an eye for real estate because of that background?
Yes. I believe I do. But yeah, so just a little bit about my background. Mm-hmm. Man, I usually so I have a Master of Fine Arts in Acting and a Bachelor of Fine from Rutgers at the State University of New Jersey. So just, a couple hours up the road from the DMV. So that's where I went for grad school. And then undergrad, I have actually a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Acting Directing. Oh. So back in the day, before I did anything to do with real estate, I was teaching still from the stage as a performer.
Okay.
And then prior to that, or right around the time I was earning my bachelor's, God just really opened up a door for me to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know anything except one summer I was looking for a job, and I ended up writing a one-act play about the estranged relationship between myself and my stepfather. It's called Mother of Mine, Mom for short. And I had such an amazing experience, Ebony, in that class that I went to go teach an Upward Bound program one summer. And I didn't know what I was opening myself up to, but it just turned into like a 10-year career as an arts educator.
Wow.
And so I started my career actually, teaching young people leadership skills through the arts.
Yes. So a natural born teacher, a natural born leader, a natural born actor, and a natural born realtor. So let's hop into it.
Okay.
So you've been in real estate, you say officially since 2017. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it all really kind of started, so I just want to start off by saying that the encouragement that I'm sharing today really started with myself. So it really kind of came from me looking to become a homeowner.
Yeah, that's how things generally start.
Yeah. And what happened was, just being totally transparent, my parents, unfortunately to this day, have never owned a home. So I wasn't that kid that grew up. I grew up in the projects of Van Street in Mobile, Alabama. And somewhere in there, probably around undergrad, I started, noticing yard signs. I started thinking about home ownership. I read a book, which is most people's first introduction into investing and wealth building. It was the Robert Kiyosaki title, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I figured you were going to So I read that, and then something started percolating about this idea of owning a home. Yeah. And at the time, I was in grad school. I was at Rutgers, and I couldn't pay my rent. It got to a place where I couldn't pay my rent just because I hadn't started working yet. This was right after I graduated, so after grad school. And I was nervous about talking to my landlord. And so the day that he came by to collect the rent, his name was Dave. He just said, "Vondell, pay me when you can." Wow. Right, that part. And I was like,
you know who that was.
That
was God all the way.
God all the way. And a homeowner who basically said to me, "Pay me when you can." And I said, "Okay, Dave, tell me more about how you're able to offer me such a generous, offer." Right. And he said, "Vondell, you've been my most loyal tenant."
Okay. Loyal meaning? I
used to pay my rent ahead of time with the student loan money and everything. So I paid him months in advance.
Right.
Excuse me. So he was basically saying, and I don't know his math or, where he was in the process in terms of how much money I was contributing to his mortgage. And we'll probably get into that a little bit later. But I essentially, myself and the other renters, were paying his mortgage.
That's how it is. Yes,
right.
It is.
And it was probably at that moment that I started to really realize that.
Right.
So he said, pay me when I can. And so I started just talking to him, whether it was on that visit or a different one, about how he was able to do that.
Right.
So he said to me, well, Vondell, you know, this is like my second house that I purchased. And then I stepped on the porch and he was telling me down the street, this is in New Jersey. He said, down the street on Redmond Avenue, he said, that was my first house. He said, and this was like my second house. And then a house over across the block on another street was his third or fourth house.
Right.
So he's now playing Monopoly on the block that I'm renting one of his houses.
Right.
And I found out that he wanted to, in fact, sell the house that I was renting from him, trade them all in and buy a strip mall.
Wow. So he wanted to go from
Single family houses
to commercial.
to buying a commercial space. Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah.
And this was probably his, I guess, long-term money.
Yeah.
Because he also was like a x-ray tech during the day.
Yeah.
So that got my brain like, wait a minute, Dave knows something that I don't know.
Yeah.
Dave is doing what I'm reading about in this Rich Dad Poor Dad book.
Right.
Dave is doing what I'm reading about in Money Magazine.
Right.
So I need to get around more people like Dave.
Exactly. And I will drop that book in the description, you guys.
Yeah.
I'll drop the link for that
Okay,
book.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great book. And so from there, I knew some of the problems in the home. So for example, the basement, you know, it was a cool place to shoot films because it was dark and dank, you know, looked
Right.
like a horror movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But it also, I remember the sump pump oftentimes getting clogged up, and it was where Dave kept his lawnmowers and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I remember at the time I had a VHS sitting on my nightstand, and it was from a very, very, very influential pastor, Jerry
Right.
Savelle, who's no longer here.
Right.
And Jerry Savelle talked about reaching for more in life.
Right.
And the title of this VHS, I'm telling my age, it was called Increase by Association.
Yes.
And he was talking about what it's like to be around the right people
Yeah.
in your life.
Yeah.
So if you want to start seeing more show up in your life, it's about you associating with people who can lead you to that and give you that wisdom.
Exactly.
And it reminded me of a quote that I read in a book one time that said the cheapest employee that you could ever buy is the author of a book,
Yes.
or you can employ them. So for 80 years worth of information, you can purchase that for $15.
Right.
How valuable and powerful is that?
Very valuable.
Right.
And
So
I don't think we look at it that way.
right, which is how I started to look at it, to say, okay, if Robert Kiyosaki has been investing and this gentleman's in his 60s or 70s, I can get 70 years worth of his information downloaded in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, leverage.
Yes.
That's redemption of the time, I think, is what God says about redeeming the time.
Yes. Suddenly.
Suddenly, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was through that thought process that I connected with a realtor at my church.
Okay.
And so she was the realtor who began to sort of, back then she was me. You know, I represented a buyer and she represented the realtor with the knowledge and the wisdom. And she, you know, it was a low barrier to entry. It wasn't all scary and intimidating because this was someone I knew from church in the community,
Right.
in my church community. So she was very knowledgeable, very nice. And she was like, you know, sure enough, V, now at the time, again, I just graduated from college. I'm not working. Dave told me pay him when I can. So I didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
But I had a dream.
Yes.
And I had an aspiration and I had a goal. And through that vision, you know, I'm really big on three core principles. Habakkuk 2:2, which says, write the vision, make it plain.
Yeah.
Which is all about, you know, a person's passions, dreams, desires, ideas, and interests. That's what I think is vision, makes up our vision.
Yeah.
And then beginning to number 2, create plans around those plans, which is found in Jeremiah 29:11. So I'm gonna do a little Bible teaching right quick.
I see.
And then if you don't really read the Bible a lot, this is a good time to jump in because it's
Yes,
good. It's good.
it's good,
It's good. And it's just
good.
3 little scriptures. And then Nehemiah 2, I think it's 18, the B clause, which says, now let us rise up and build.
Yeah.
So write, plan, build was the format that I was following.
Right.
And that led me to purchasing my first home
Wow.
through Melanie, who was the real estate agent. It was a whole ton of paperwork, I remember. The money, God provided the money. You know,
Yeah.
I found favor. I think at the time, I have to go back and look at that deal, but I'm trying to think, like, I don't remember the particulars. I just know I didn't have enough money.
Yeah.
I didn't have
But
everything.
somehow, some way.
Somehow, some way, God made a way
And we'll talk about that
Yeah.
when we get deep dive more into the questions, how people can have money gifted to them.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk
Absolutely.
more
I see it
about
every
that
day.
point.
See it every
Yeah.
day. Yeah. So that was my first step into home ownership.
Okay. So did that ignite the fire for you to become a realtor?
Not quite, not yet.
Okay.
That started the process, but
So how did we get to that?
yeah.
process?
So how we got to the realtor piece was that, unfortunately, that home. This is June of 06.
June of 06.
Right,
Okay.
and we all know what happened in a couple years later, 07, 08. It was the economic downturn. And there's a really good movie for those who may not, been around, or you may have been younger, you have a little gray under you. You might need to go back and take some notes.
Yeah.
But there's a great movie called The Big Short, and it stars Matt Damon, and a couple other notables. But it's a really good movie that is based on history, but it's the account of the guy who pretty much made out like a fat rat on everybody else's loss. It talks about the banking system, and it's very entertaining, but it talks about the banking system and what they were actually doing that was a detriment to consumers in the housing market, and how we had that whole bubble burst. But yeah, it's a very good movie that walks us through in an entertaining way what happened during that whole period.
So that period of 2008.
2008. So I lost my house. Yeah, I was getting to that piece. So I lost my house. So I was the first person in my family to buy a house, take that risk. But I was also, unfortunately, the first person in my family to take a hit and lose that house. I just was upside down, lost my job, full-time job at the time. A lot of people were being laid off and losing their jobs. Excuse me. And so that's what happened. I lost my job. And then shortly thereafter, in trying to figure out how to get back into home ownership, I started going down the path of an investor. So I started looking into wholesaling, how to flip houses, how to play Monopoly like Dave was doing.
Yeah.
And it was my sales background and my teaching background. I taught at Rutgers for 12 and a half years.
Yeah.
That I started to say, as I'm going through these investor classes, I don't know how to put a basic deal together.
Okay.
They're teaching me about how to fix it up by
Yeah.
fixing the bathroom and the kitchen, which usually adds the most value to a home. But they're not telling me just how to talk to Ebony and say, hey, how do we get this deal on paper?
Yeah.
So I set out to find out how to do that.
Ah,
And in my doing that,
that's how.
exactly, I spoke
Okay.
to another realtor. I was transitioning from New Jersey. I had to, like Will Smith said, my life got turned, flipped upside down. And I was on my way back to Tennessee. But I was making a lot of money because I was a coach at this time. So I lost my job. I'm skipping a lot of steps, but
Yeah.
I lost a corporate job. And at this time I was relying on that teaching background, and I had ventured into becoming a coach.
Got you.
So I was a coach, and I worked from home remotely and made a really, really great living.
Okay.
So I was trying to figure out, how do I park that money and get a return on investment for that money?
Got you.
So that led me to a couple of classes, and I talked to a real estate agent. And she said to me, she was in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and this was a client that put us in touch. And I never forget, because she had this really genteel Southern accent. She sounded like one of the Golden Girls.
Okay.
And she was like, well, Vondell, have you ever thought about getting your license? She said, I know you want to invest, but it's a real bread basket in Tennessee, Vondell. It's a real bread basket. And I'm like, who is this little old lady putting me up on game?
Yeah.
So I looked into it, and I saw that I could learn the contracting side of it in 5 weeks. And here I was paying $200 and $300 a pop for these, guru classes.
Gotcha.
And I said, okay, in 5 weeks I can learn how to do the business side of it, and maybe I'll activate the license. I wasn't sure at the time, but I was like, I'll have it in my back pocket. So short of the long, it was really that journey that got me into the licensing side. And there's more to it.
Yeah.
But that's really where it started, me just saying, okay, I can have an option. And then I also saw, around this time, I had been elected to city council.
Wow.
And so I was saying, okay, the zoning portion of the class would aid me in that as an elected official to help people.
Yeah.
And that's really where it kind of started.
So it sounds like getting the licensure was all a part of learning.
Absolutely.
Like you were learning about becoming a homeowner, and then you had the unfortunate event where you've lost a home. So now each moment it seems like you were learning.
Yeah, it was one big learning curve.
It was one big learning
And even
curve.
to this day, that's what it is. Every transaction is different.
Yeah.
And so being around other entrepreneurs and investors and homeowners, I began to hear, one of the ways I learned to listen was to listen for what's missing. So you kind of like listening between the lines, if you will. And no matter whether I was online in the guru classes or I was around other real estate agents, I started listening to, okay, where's the opportunity?
Yeah.
Where's the opportunity for growth for myself?
Right.
Sorry, I hit my mic.
No, you're fine.
And then where's the opportunity to help other people?
Yeah.
And so when I was in the room with investors, I saw that they didn't have anybody to help them find deals.
Right.
And so if you're an investor, you got to be your own real estate agent. You got to be your own pretty much bank. Mm-hmm. You got to be your own kind of negotiator, if you will. There's so many hats that, I hear people all the time brag, like, and it might be a flex depending on who you learn from and how you go about it. Mm-hmm. But I was just talking to an actual client on the license side who was saying they were thinking about getting into wholesaling. And after they were like, well, I said, why are you getting into wholesaling and not just get your license? And they was like, I want to avoid, doing all this and paying all these fees. And I said, well, you're going to pay more trying to avoid all of that because you got to, like, she was like, I don't like talking to people.
Right.
I was like, but you still got to talk to investors.
Right.
And you got to find both sides of the deal.
Yeah.
And then feed it back and convince the investor. So you're lead generating just like I am.
Right.
At the end of the day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So yeah. So
that's why I knew you were just perfect for this episode, because we want you want people to avoid as much as possible
headaches, slowdowns,
yes,
stymies,
exactly,
setbacks,
yes.
So
first question is, okay, how do you debunk the myth that it's just so difficult to purchase a home, especially when you're dealing with a first time homeowner? Great question,
Nurse E. They call you Nurse. I call you Nurse E or Ev or
no, you call me Nurse E. Nurse E.
Nurse E. Candid conversation with Nurse E.
Yes.
Okay. All right. My friend is Ebony off camera. Yes. But yes. So that one of the most common misconceptions that I think first time home buyers bring to my table when I meet with them is it takes a long time. Like I was just talking to a first-time homebuyer the other day. When I told them, they could be in a home within the next 30, 40 days from when they get their ducks in a row, they were like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how long did you think it'd take? And they said, I thought it was going to be at least like 6 months, 6 to 9 months. I'm like, no, you can have a kid in that amount of time, but you can buy a house, you can buy 3, 4 houses, you can buy a block in that amount of time. So yeah.
But you can only do that. We'll talk more about that. That'll be the next question.
Yeah.
The steps that it takes.
All the steps.
So this person was in position to.
They were in position.
Okay.
Right. And usually in the mindset. Well, let me just put this out there first of all.
Okay.
Let's just not step over this. One of my mentors one time said, Vondell, his uncle Presley told him never step over $1 to pick up a dime. And what I mean by that, how that translates into home ownership, is a lot of people are already paying a mortgage.
Yes.
It's just not yours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's no diss, that's no slight to renters. A lot of times I think buyers can sometimes feel like, real estate agents are just about their commission. No, we really are pro home ownership.
Yeah.
And we really want the equity, which is the amount of money. So think about the house like a bank, for those who may not, I'm sure everybody watching knows this, but there may be somebody who may not. And if you look at your house as a bank, $400,000 is the price tag or the account. Let's just call it the bank account. And if you own that bank account, every dollar you put into that bank account is whose? Yours. But if you own this $400,000 bank or this bank account and it's got $400,000 in it and it's your account, every dollar I put into it belongs to who?
Me.
You. So that account represents the mortgage.
Right.
And if Nurse E owns this account, I'm paying my rent every month, which is me essentially putting that money in your bank account. But when I have my name on the account, I'm putting the money in my own pocket.
Exactly.
And that's really what it comes down to. So you're really paying the bank and paying that mortgage. It may belong to someone else. And that's what Dave was essentially saying, that Vondell, you've been paying my mortgage, thank you. And you've been so on time with it that I'm not behind.
Right.
So he probably was paid up.
Right.
If he was ahead, he had other renters in this multi-family house.
And his mortgage could have been $800.
It could
Let's
have been,
just say,
$1,000, $800.
and then, but he's charging you $1,600.
Right.
So he's making a profit of.
And then plus he's charging the other 3 or 4 people in there. That's $1,600. So everything above his mortgage, he can put in an account to help him offset repairs, or he just can travel, help
Whatever
his family,
he wants to
pay
do.
college tuition, whatever he wants to do. Right. But
so you're basically saying that it's not that difficult. You can get a home if all of your ducks are in a row in 30 to 45 days.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So what are the ducks that need to be in a row in order for you to be able to?
Okay. So the first 2 pieces of the duck, if
quack,
we will.
Quack.
Well, think about it like two wings on a duck, since we went that route. The first wing would be to talk to the lender.
Okay.
They're the money side of the transaction. And then the second wing that you absolutely need to take off into home ownership would be to speak with a realtor, a licensed realtor.
Okay.
And so those are the first main 2 steps, because without the lender, number one, we can't submit an offer.
Right, we got to know how much you're approved for. Now, does the realtor and the lender come together?
Absolutely. So those are the first 2 people that a homeowner would employ to be on their home ownership team.
Well, what I mean by come together, like, do you have a lender that you work with, or
absolutely.
would I have to go and find a lender?
Great question.
Okay.
Great question. So either or. And most real estate agents already have those working relationships, and you really want to take a look at both, even if if you would have come to me and you said, hey, Vondell, I've spoken to lender, Samantha or whatever. I'll try. My goal is to build a relationship with that lender because you have a relation with Samantha because you have a relationship. Now you also could come to me and I say, well, Samantha's awesome. We don't want to take anything from her, but let's shop around. Let's shop what Samantha's saying against some other people, of which I may say, well, here's another 2, 3 recommendations.
Right.
And you're under no obligation to use the lenders or any of the people that your real estate agent suggests to you. It's just that they have relationships and they know how they work.
Yeah.
And so, if
y'all are a team.
We're a team, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you had to, and I like that analogy because, would Michael Jordan rather play with Pippen and,
Or Isaiah Thomas.
Or somebody who's not on his team. You know what I mean? Somebody who ain't on his team. Does LeBron want to get down with, somebody who came off the street down here in, Maryland, or do he want to play with whoever's on his team out of Shaq? Or who else is on the Lakers? I don't know.
He did play with Shaq for a little while, but that was in Miami. We're not getting ready to do sports with you.
I'm gonna mess it all up. I'm gonna mess it all up.
I'll be sitting there trying to clean out. No. Okay, but y'all are a team.
Yes, we are a team.
And
absolutely.
So, you can. A person can get a lender,
you
know, but most first-time homeowners don't know a lender. They usually will go through their bank
or
something
union.
Like that, but that's not a personal relationship.
Right.
I think, considering going, whoever the realtor is, going with a lender that they know, I think it can be more of a family type of deal, and that they have your best interests at heart and they're good. You don't want to be working with people and they have tumultuous relationships.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
It's all about relationships in real estate.
Yeah.
And those relationships can either break or make the transaction go through. Yeah. You know what I mean? So having an amazing lender that may be the referral of a real estate agent or a realtor, that lender could literally pick up the phone, call the person that you're trying to purchase the house from, have a conversation with their agent, and make or break that whole deal.
Wow.
Yeah, we see it all the time.
Okay. Yeah. So you need a realtor, you need a lender.
You need a lender.
And then
those are the first 2 core people. From there, you actually will then say, okay, you need a buyer broker agreement. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we're under contract.
Yep.
Now.
Well, no, not yet. So before that, you have to. So right now, anybody that comes and talks to me, I'm just having a ethical conversation with a potential customer, but they're not a client.
Right.
So when I meet everyone, when I first meet them, I'm just doing almost like a doctor. I'm just giving, sort of based on what you're sharing with me, I'm giving you sort of within the law, my best advice.
Right.
Okay. But I don't represent you yet as a client.
Yes.
You're not my client per se. And so the first thing you do is have a conversation about what your state laws are.
Okay.
Okay. And a lot of consumers miss this part, Nurse E. They really don't understand how the law plays into this. And so one of the reasons that you want to talk to a licensed realtor is because I have gone through the rigors of understanding that law at a high level and what the state of Maryland and what the state of Tennessee requires of me to represent a client.
Right. So you're the expert.
I'm the expert. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like going to a, who would you want to talk to? Your Uncle Bobo on the street about your Tesla? Or do you want to go talk to the Tesla technicians?
Exactly.
Who's going to know the most about that Tesla?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So yes, so that's the next conversation is we usually have what's called, or when people come to me, I offer a free, what's called a strategy session. And most people think we're trying to sell them, or they think I'm trying to sell them. I'm not trying to do anything but understand your goals and dreams at that point.
That's it.
I'm trying to turn your dream into keys. That's really what I'm trying to do.
It.
That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So that initial conversation, I'm just walking you through things like your location. Where have you been thinking about moving? What is your budget? What price point are you looking to pay? Why are you looking to move? Moving is stressful. Why now? Why are you looking to move?
Right.
Is your family growing? Is it shrinking?
Yeah.
Did you get a new job?
Yes.
Did you unfortunately lose a job and your financial picture shifted?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's messy. Are you dealing with a divorce?
Exactly.
Sometimes families don't always agree. And I would like to say one of the ways that I'm different is that I bring my faith into the equation.
Yeah.
I remember one of the most touching calls that I received was a woman had found me on Google, and this was in Tennessee. She just Googled, and I was at home studying something. I was probably working on a designation to better myself as a realtor, but I saw it and I picked up the phone.
Right.
And thank God I did, because she said to me, I tried to call 3 other people, none of them picked up.
Okay.
She said, and I called you and you picked up. Well, it turns out that this young lady had just gone through a messy divorce. She was taking care of her sick mother, and she was under a lot of duress and stress.
Right.
Through the divorce scenario, she was to obtain the house. She had to fix the house up.
Right.
She had so much weighing on her, and then she had her adult children, and not to mention her own job and her own health and her own mental, stuff that she had going on. And before we talked anything about her house, I could just hear it in her voice. I said, hey, do you mind if I kind of just pray with you? And she said, oh, wow. She said, yes, please.
Yes.
And I could tell that through that conversation, she started crying. She was able to release everything she was carrying around before we got into this major conversation about what to do with everything she had going on.
Yeah.
And so that's very key. Because we become family.
Yeah.
We become family. And she said to me, no one's ever offered to do that. And I know that it was my assignment to pick up the phone that day and to intersect with her. Yeah. Yeah. So.
And you are like family because when you get all of your ducks in a row, you agree to work with a realtor, and then you get to the point where you're purchasing a home, that's not your only home that you're going to purchase.
That's not right. That's not.
And so you rather be with someone that you trust and have a good relationship with to expand that portfolio. And that's a little bit down the line, but I'm just trying to correlate that with it being family and someone that you can trust.
Somebody that you trust. Somebody, I would say in choosing a realtor, find somebody you trust. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because this person, you're going to be sharing with them the most intimate aspects of your life.
Yeah.
What room do you eat in?
Right.
What room, is going to make the most sense during the holidays.
Right.
There's so many pieces that you need that person that you trust. So so those are the major steps. And after you figure out the motivation, my job is to understand the next piece is, do you have a lender that you trust and work with and that has your best interests at heart? And from that lender piece, that's the mortgage. I want to find out also if you have an agent, because most people may not know this, but if you technically have a broker buyer agreement in place, it's unethical for me to now talk to you about, I have to by law send you to speak to
the person,
your real estate agent who you're in relationship with. Yeah. And the reason that's important, I just want to highlight this, is let's say you show up and you don't let me know that you have an agent. Right. And I ask you, do you? And you say no. I'm taking your word. I don't go check somewhere in a record book or anywhere. I just take your word.
Right.
So if you tell me no, and then you've been moonlighting and you got a side realtor, and you've been talking to that realtor, and you've been talking to me, or they your main realtor, I'm your side realtor. You like that?
I did like that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But here's the repercussions of that. Realtor A, who I never knew, let's say, and you sign paperwork, you establish a broker agency agreement with both. They both now legally have the ability to come after you for their portion of the broker agency commission. So that's why it's key that you answer that question. Like we're really trying to look out for your best interest when we ask at an open house, do you have an agent? You know, most people are guarded and think it's all, no. We want to help you. Right. But there's a lot we're tracking with legally and ethically as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, so once we find that out, after we have that buyer agency agreement, I like to educate people on what the compensation laws are and what they aren't, help them feel comfortable and confident with that, because at the end of the day, let's keep it 100.
Let's keep it 100.
Let's keep it a buck.
Like,
everybody wants to get paid.
We're doing this work,
right.
And we want to help you, but we get paid. We got to get paid.
This is how I feed my family. This is how I feed me and my family. Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, after you have that conversation and you decide to work with this particular realtor, the next step is you are setting up an appointment to talk through strategy on what's the best fit for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that doesn't sound too bad.
It's not at all. And it's all a conversation. And one of the things I like to tell people, Nurse E, because they always, the whole your salesperson, get out of my face, is I tell people, look, it's a no stress conversation. Whether you want, and I just tell people, hey, Nurse E, that's great. And I would love to just meet with you to learn more about your goals and dreams towards home ownership. And I want to walk you through a strategy, whether you use this strategy within the next 6 months to a year or 6 years down the line, or you never use it. Right. I just want you to have tools in your tool belt for whenever you're ready.
Got you.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay. So you can get in a home in 30 to 45 days. You need
or less.
Or less. If all your ducks are in a row.
Depending on how things move, right?
You need to have a realtor, a lender.
Right.
You have to come into agreement.
Right.
And then you know the vision. You make a plan.
Yeah.
You start building.
Yeah.
Okay. And what type of job does someone have to have, or income do they have to have in order to purchase?
Great question. So that question, I say, let's go talk to a lender.
Okay.
Yeah. So so the way I kind of tell people, I can talk to them about it, but I like for them to talk to a lender because the lender has all the nerdy numbers. Okay. They're like the accountant side, or the checks and balances side of the transaction. So I tell people, hey, once you understand your buying power,
that's it.
That's really what you're going to talk to a lender about, because there's two numbers, main numbers. Well, three. There's the number that the seller wants.
Yep.
For the house that they want to sell you. There's the price and the number that you have that you want to pay.
And the third is your credit score?
That's another number, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
And the other number is really the number you can afford based on that credit score. Yeah. So we call that third number your buying power, your purchasing power.
Yeah.
So it's really about, so let's say, for example, what this looks like in a real situation is buyer A says, oh my gosh, I want to go buy a house in PG County.
Right.
And homes up there can be starting at $600,000. But your purchasing power might only be $400,000. So if I, as a real estate agent, allow us to go off into the sunset and start dreaming into that $600,000 house in PG County, then I have to come back, I'm gonna have to break your heart and be like, I'm sorry, Nurse E, the lender said, that's going to have to be second tier dream, because our first tier dream is to maybe come over here and look in a different county.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
you ain't got to worry about that.
That's really what I think is the biggest pull. Yeah. And that third number is based on a mixture of things. All right. It's based on the main thing that most people probably have heard of. The biggest piece is their credit score and their debt to income ratio. Yeah. And the lender has that matrix and that makeup.
Now, does your debt have to be all paid off before you decide to purchase a home?
That is an amazing question. No.
Yes.
And most people don't know this. That's a dope question, because most people don't know that I know lenders who can actually help you pay down a portion of your student loans. Yes.
Did y'all hear that?
Yes.
Put it in the chat. Put it in the comments. How many of you guys have student loans
Oh my gosh.
and want to be a homeowner?
Right. That doesn't have to stop you.
Wow.
So there's a portion of a loan program or product that lenders that I work with, they're my preferred lending partners, that can help you navigate that whole thing, pay a portion of it off. There's funding out there available to help you pay down a portion of your student loan.
That's something new that I learned today.
Yeah, so having student
Wow, that's
loans
great.
does not stop you from purchasing a home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not student loans and or other debt.
Yeah, other debt. So
Yeah.
let's say you have, matter of fact, I have a client that I'm working with now that once they close, a portion of their credit cards are going to be paid off.
Wow.
So that's the power of an amazing lender, is they're looking at your entire financial picture. Because remember, the lender's goal is to do what? Help you get
a
into that
loan
home,
so that you can get in the house.
but not keep going to pay them back for that loan. So I hear a lot of people, for example, let's just put out a little sacred cow here.
Right.
Some people be like, well, I don't want to be house poor.
Right.
Neither does the bank.
Right.
Neither do I as your realtor. So
Right.
that's why you want to talk to the professionals.
Right.
Think about it. If you're the bank, do you want
Right.
somebody to be house poor?
Right.
Because you're just going to get the house back. They don't want the house back.
No.
They're in the business of loaning money, not
Right.
buying houses back for
And
people.
you paying interest on the loan.
Right. So the bank wants you to keep the home.
Right.
They don't want it back.
Yeah.
So they're doing everything in their power to make sure, and that's what that whole process is for. It's going to feel like you're going talking to the IRS by the time they get through with you, but they're making sure that you're lender worthy so that you can keep the home. Not only purchase the home today, but you can keep that home for the next 30 years or 15 or however long it takes you to pay that to become full,
Right.
Outright own it without owing anything.
Now, with your first time homeowners,
Mm-hmm.
do you highly recommend a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage?
Right, that's a great question, and that really depends on what their goals are, and it really depends on maybe their financial matrix, and that answer is going to be different for each person. But the average loan program is about what's called a 30-year fixed program. There's many different products and programs, but those your FHA, your
So you need to you gave the acronym, but what are the
right,
actual
right,
words for
right,
FHA?
right. FHA. I knew you was going to say that. Federal Housing Authority, FHA. It was funny because initially it rolled off and I was about to say it and I was like, okay. And then when you asked me, so it mixed up in my head.
Because everybody doesn't know abbreviations.
Federal Housing. Yeah. So the FHA is a government-backed loan, and I'm going to just talk briefly on them because one of the things that you'll learn, and I think we're going to talk about careers in real estate. So if you're out there aspiring to be a real estate agent, please, by all means, you know what my favorite line is?
What?
That's a great question. Let's talk to a blank. Let's talk to an appraiser. Let's talk to a surveyor.
So
Let's
that
talk
way
to a lender.
you are talking to the expert for that particular
Absolutely.
area
Absolutely.
that can give you
More details.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my realtor told my realtor told me this, and really the appraiser should have
told you that.
explained
Yeah.
to that
because
to you.
that mixes people up a lot of times.
Right.
Imagine going to your mechanic and he's like, well, Nurse E, look like you got a laryngitis. He don't know nothing about.
That was what I was just getting ready. I wasn't going to say mechanic. I was going to say it's just like if they're asking you a medical question.
Yeah, it's like,
Let me have
I'm
you
gonna be like, call Nurse E. You want to talk about your spine? Yeah, it look crooked to me, but what do I know?
Right.
You
And
need
they
to talk.
supposed to be like
right,
that,
right.
right.
You need to talk to Nurse E. If I mess you
Right,
up, you walk around with a
right,
hunchback
yeah.
your whole life. You walk around
Right.
talking, my realtor adjusted my back. No,
Exactly,
we're not gonna
no.
do that. That's what we're not gonna do.
That's not what we're not gonna do that.
But your basic loan products are your FHA, Federal Housing Administration, your conventional loans. That's a more of an investor. And these different loan types have different requirements of how much it takes for down payment and how much percentages and all that. And a great lender can help you get into the weeds on that. The other one that is a very popular program is your Veterans VA loan, Veterans Administration. That is an amazing product that is designed for our service-based members. And if you're a VA person, please call me. I'm not just saying that. I have a lender. He is amazing. All my lender partners are amazing, but this gentleman is a 5th generation military service member, and he is like a Marine when it comes to loans. He is just off the chart. He knows the VA loan inside and out. He's been doing it for probably over 20 plus years. Yeah. So he really knows that program.
That's good.
Yeah.
Really smart on your behalf as far as getting people who are. I would love to have someone that was in the military.
Sure. Yeah. Talking to you about your, it's
Yeah.
like in your field.
Your VA benefits.
Yeah. Your primary care might say, it looks like something going on with your kidneys, but I'm seeing to a specialist.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So you got that product, and then there's another couple of products that people may not know about.
Well, don't overwhelm my viewers.
Okay. Yeah, we ain't gonna overwhelm you, but I got some.
Do you want to know, or what do you want to know? All right.
Just
a little bit.
Just a little
Yeah.
bit, because I'm gonna be doing a seminar on this one.
Okay.
I'm gonna be doing a seminar on this one.
And I want them to contact you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this was gonna be hot. They're gonna want to be at this one.
Okay.
So there's first-time home buyers, which many of you are. But what if you already own a home, and you are a first-time investor?
Right. Oh, so you can get a special loan.
As a first-time homeowner who also could, because you, as a first-time home buyer, you're in a sexy position because you could be a first-time home buyer as well as a first-time investor. And if you are that, and let's just be honest, we know that the biggest pushback that we get around purchasing a home right now is the interest rate and the cash to close. Like I don't have all this money. Did you know that if that is your situation, you can still become a homeowner, and you might buy what we call a house that needs a little more love. It's maybe unique, especially in the DMV here. You can buy a house that maybe what we call an REI home. And that's basically an acronym that says the bank owns it. It's a foreclosed on home, perhaps. Or the home may need some extra love or repairs. Maybe it's been sitting for a long time.
Right.
There's a special product called a 203K loan.
Yes. Yeah.
That will help
pays for the repairs.
Pays for the repairs before you buy it, and they're going to lend you the money of what the house is worth after it's fixed up.
Oh wow! Because the amount after it's fixed up, the amount is going to go up because you've done a bunch
added
of
value.
Added
Exactly.
Value. So do you go in with equity?
You go in with equity.
Oh.
You need to get your license. Nurse E the realtor.
You're right. Nurse E the realtor. Like OMG. I mean, unstoppable. Okay, so all right, that's good to know. So we've covered the ducks in the row that you need to have, some loans that can help you get approved. We do know that if we have a insane amount of money, we can go and pay cash for the home.
You can go pay,
if you wanted to.
You could.
Do you recommend that?
It just depends on the situation. One thing that I do know from just my time in looking at investing is that most investors use other people's money.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay, that sounds really, really good. Have we missed anything as far as the steps of purchasing a home?
There are a few more steps, but I don't know if we have time to go into detail. So I just kind of,
overall,
just give you kind of an overview.
Okay.
And then those strategy calls is kind of where we kind of go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Into it, and showing you sort of the pro of becoming a homeowner sooner than later.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think, I wish I had a Harry Potter like magic wand to show people the future is because they think they're going to gain something by waiting.
So basically he's telling you, get your ducks in order sooner than later.
Have conversations at least.
Have conversations and take the step.
Yeah, take the steps. If nothing else, educate yourself so that you can make an informed decision of why you might be waiting. I think the biggest pang of every realtor is that people don't know the full picture of them, the cost of them waiting.
And just to that point, Vondell, we also have to look at, once we meet with a realtor and once we meet with a lender and we assess our debt to income ratio and we assess our job, our income and everything like that, some markets may be a little bit more sexier for you to look into purchasing a home. The DMV is great.
It's an amazing area.
It's an amazing area. But if you sit down with a realtor and you sit down with a lender and realistically, this is what you have going on. Yeah. North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas may be an option based on financially what you look like. And I think that more people need to know that. Of course, we want you to be led. Right. You know what I mean? I'm not just telling you okay, get up and move just there. Willy-nilly, right. But if you're making, let's just say $70,000 and you want a house in New York, realistically, you know, it may not.
The numbers may not work.
Yeah, the numbers may not
Right.
work, you know, but it doesn't mean that you cannot purchase a home or anything
Right,
like
in
that.
a different market.
Yeah, just in a different market.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something that they also need to be aware of.
Yeah, that's a great point. So one of the things, for example, that I'm proud of is that I'm licensed in Tennessee and in Maryland. And I'm often out with my Maryland, you know, new housing family, and they'll say, man, you know, I got this amount of money, it's not doing what I wanted to do. And I show them a house in Tennessee, and they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I lived there, or I wish, you know, that those prices were there.
Right.
And just depending on their situation, you know, I mean, I think the most obvious one is if you want to be owner occupied, that's a little bit more tricky. But if you're looking to say, okay, I want to own a home in one of those markets that you mentioned, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, you might be able to purchase a home sooner, and then maybe by delaying a year, let someone else rent that house, and then you continue to do what you're doing. But in a year, you might be able to take equity from that home to finance the purchase of your home in a different market like the DMV. So many ways.
The biggest takeaway that I am getting from this conversation is have a conversation.
Have several conversations.
Yes.
And just think through strategy. That's a part of that being in the room.
And connecting with people.
And
So
connecting
this
with the
episode,
like minds. Yeah.
Vondell's going to give me all of his information so that you guys, if you're interested in having a next steps conversation with him about real estate, you can give him a call, shoot him a message, and he definitely would be willing to set something up for you.
Yeah.
And so that's a really, really good thing.
And can I say this little nugget? Because I feel like I left it out and I don't want to leave this on the table. So like I stated, I'm licensed in Tennessee and in Maryland, but I also can help guide you to the right realtor fit in those other markets. So a lot of people don't know that I have a network of trusted agents in other markets.
Right.
So it saves you the headache and the frustration of having to figure out who's going to do me wrong, who's going to really listen to me, who's going to have my family's best interest at heart.
Right.
So for example, there's someone that attends church with us right now, and she's in the military, and she's about to PCS, which is the military acronym for the military is about to move her to Colorado. And so working with myself and that lender, his name is Bill, that I was talking about, the VA specialist, she has people that she trusts who can lead her to the next domino so that when she gets to Colorado, she can hit the ground running.
Exactly. Wow, that's great. Thank you for dropping that nugget.
Yeah.
And thank you.
And a real estate agent, if you get your license, you get paid off of that.
Yeah.
You get paid for that. Yeah.
For the referral.
For the referral.
Gotcha.
Most people don't know that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
Thank
you so much for your knowledge. And thank you for just taking this moment to share with the audience and the viewers about real estate and having a conversation and how to get their ducks in a row and that it is possible.
Very possible.
You know, so I appreciate that so much. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much. And so
can I give the viewers a gift?
what's the gift?
Well,
Come on my show want to give y'all a gift.
You too.
right.
It's a gift from you.
Okay.
Because you brought me on.
Yes.
So then I could give you the gift and you give it to them. So we want to give you a gift. It's just a free Facebook group that I made available.
Okay, and we can put that in the description.
You're gonna put it in. Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna put. You're gonna give me all of your information.
Yeah, but I just wanted to let them know that
it's.
it's down there. But I host a group called Your Last Year Paying Rent.
Okay. Your last year paying rent.
Yeah. So one of the things that I realized when I listen to so many clients, one of the things that I hear over and over again is they like, Vondell, I want this to be my last year paying rent. Vondell, I'm so mad. All the money that I added up to realize I was paying my landlord's mortgage.
Right.
And they know, they say to me, hey, Vondell, every year the rent goes up.
Every year, and it has to.
It has to.
It has to.
And so with that, I said, man, these honest, hardworking moms, dads, parents, family members, aunts, uncles, whoever now, man, they're angry that no one's telling them that this can be their last year paying rent.
Right.
And so I just said, okay, I'm gonna start a movement.
Right.
Their last year paying rent.
Okay.
This gonna be your last year paying rent. So you guys look out for
that in the description.
It's time to turn your dream into keys.
Period. He gonna make a song about it. as I end every show, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You were made for a purpose, on purpose. And my hope is that this episode shows you how you can move in purpose in purchasing a home.
Yes.
All right. So until next time, I will see you on the next episode. Bye.